Hi, this is Barbara Sanders, and this is Sacred Metamorphoses Channel. And you can learn more about me at my website, also sacredmetamorphoses.com. I'm planning to read a story to you today that I wrote and see how that goes. I've never done this before, and this should be interesting. It's a story that I wrote in the last week or so, and it's called Reimagining the Beginning of Humanity, an epic short story. So I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, years and years after having heard the story of Adam and Eve for quite some time, a little girl was told by Spirit that this story was not only false, but that it was also misleading. This old story led people of this world into considerable disagreement and division, prompting much shame and judgment. Spirit chose her to birth a remaking of the story, one more fitting to the 21st century. Actually, Spirit came to her on a sunny walk one day with her two dogs as she stared at the lovely magnolia trees in her neighborhood. A yellow butterfly wafted by. She kept hearing the words revision, reinterpretation, and short story, and she wondered what all that was about. Seconds later, Spirit spoke in a somewhat deafening tone. You are here to tell, excuse me, you are here to tell a more honest story of Adam and Eve, or rather, the beginning of humanity. The little girl did not like hearing the words coming at her, but then slowed down her walk and wondered about it. What if I say no thank you to this job request? I mean, I'm not all that creative or smart. And Spirit boomed, I am going to tell you the story to you. All you have to do is write it down. Well, that didn't sit too well with the little girl. She responded, I am not a secretary. And in fact, she chose not to learn to type in high school when everyone else was learning because she didn't want to end up a secretary like her mother was. This little girl once heard that her mother and her sister could type 100 words a minute, but the little girl, once out of college, having quit graduate school after a semester, finally got a job at a college library typing only 20 words a minute. She had taught herself how to type, and this was a card catalog job when libraries still had those enormous hard copy files. No internet back then. Accuracy was more important than typing fast. Graduating college, Phi Beta Kappa and Magnum Cum Laude. I can't even say that. Graduating college, Phi Beta Kappa and Magna Cum Laude from a private Southern college, the little girl had been taught that she was smart, but she didn't feel that smart. And working at a minimum wage job at the time seemed lowly, calm enough, but very boring. In fact, as Spirit reminded her, Spirit did help her decide to go to another graduate school, which was more in line with her purpose and mission on Earth. She did appreciate Spirit's wisdom about that. But being told that she would just be a channel or a secretary for Spirit's creativity and goal, she wasn't impressed, although she walked home and thought about it for a moment. Hey, she realized, I can reimagine the story of Adam and Eve by myself. I don't need Spirit to be speaking through me. Rebellious as always and out to prove something, a little macho in her own way. It wasn't like Spirit was asking her to birth a baby as a virgin, but she still felt some resistance. Taking a nap once she was home, she had a dream. In the dream was a garden, but there were no Adam and there were no Eves. That's wrong. Let me say this again. In the dream was a garden, but there was no Adam and there was no Eve. There was just a snake at some point. And wow, was she beautiful. Sultry and seductive, the divine feminine snake wrapped around a peach tree, grinning at the little girl. I can help tell the story, the snake goddess said. Don't listen to Spirit, but do listen to me, because we can make money on this story. We may even gain power and fame if that gets to be a bestseller. Work with me, honey. That felt so much more palatable and normal than the demanding voice of Spirit, who did sound a little masculine. The little girl awoke from her dream, a little put off even by the feminine snake. Why are these beings or spiritual presences trying to persuade me? No, sell me on the idea that I need to record a different story about Adam and Eve. That was just a story after all. But then a dragonfly flew by her window, stopped flying, and rested on a flower. It spoke loudly as well. People have actually believed that story and so many other stories in that book called the Bible. Please just help us get this new revised story out there so that people will stop fighting with each other, creating wars, killing, raping, and maiming each other. Wow, thought the little girl, so much urgency and pressure. It seems like every creature or spirit I see or hear has the same message. Maybe this is important somehow? Well, what's it going to be? Asked the dragonfly. We won't steer you wrong. And in fact, we will promise you that you will enjoy this writing or recording process if you'll do it. We need an English major, and most people who are English majors are still working hard at jobs like your low-paying library one because there aren't many other jobs for them. In fact, you owe us. We helped you in the past, and now it's time to pay up. The little girl wondered only briefly while the dragonfly called out the royal we, as if all beings were part of the sum whole. Another wow escaped the little girl's lips. She had no idea when Spirit offered her blessings that there was a price tag to it. She didn't even know they were blessings back then. She only knew that life seemed hard and sometimes good things happened. So she told Spirit and Snake and Dragonfly that she would think about it and to leave her alone for a while, having been taught to sleep on all significant options. They agreed. Excuse me. The next several days, weeks, and months flew by, and the little girl's life was going okay. She had some friends and a place to live, her sweet doggies, and lots of open time on her hands at that time. She got a little bored and found herself wondering what it would be like to open up to Spirit and all these other spiritual messengers and agree to be their secretary for a little while, knowing that if that didn't work out, she could always quit this job and do something else after all. A little fear crept up in her, however, realizing that all of her life she'd been working so hard to find love and to get attention. And she wasn't so sure she could quit something she committed to do. Maybe she could change this pattern. Just then, a goldfinch perched in a tree outside the little girl's window and said, "Hey, you aren't a published short story writer at this point. You do live in Nashville, though, so maybe you can imagine letting Spirit co-write with you, because as you know, writing with Spirit can get you publicity, and you might have your own writing career one day." Thought the little girl, this bird may be onto something. After all, that's how musicians and artists sometimes get started, even writers. Co-writing with a successful person could help her do what she had always wanted to do, to write creatively and get published. But with Spirit? So on her next walk, the little girl looked up into the clouds and whistled her very loud and piercing whistle, her claim to fame, and I'll do it now, asking Spirit to come on down and talk with her. Spirit evidently didn't like being summoned in such a way, and so it took its time. She said, "I've come to understand with the help of my consultants that perhaps I should go ahead and hear what you have to say regarding this reimagining of the story of Adam and Eve, the beginning of humanity. What could it hurt except maybe wasting my time?" Spirit didn't feel so good about this and told her, "Well, I have offered it to the little boy down the street who said he'd kill to get to write with me, but you were my first choice, so maybe we can give it a try. What's your schedule like?" So they set a date to get together to co-write this new story. Wonder what I should wear, thought the little girl on the day of the appointment. What the hell? Spirit sees me naked in every way, so maybe I don't need to dress up for it. Then the little girl thought, well, I'm not sure what to call Spirit. Is it an it or a he or she? Spirit came floating down from the clouds and answered that question. We are a we or a they, not an it or she or he. Thank you very much, seeming offended. Oops, sorry, the little girl thought. I forgot that Spirit can read my mind. I'd better be careful even in my thinking so as to be polite to them. Remembering that, however, seemed like a lot of hard work too. Spirit then sputtered and said, I heard that. No, you don't need to be polite, but you are certainly chatty inside that head of yours. Well, you made me this way, the little girl responded, and I'm not sure why you did. Or did you? Spirit then said, wait a minute, you sound like you're buying into the idea that I'm like God, or what many people think of as God, that guy who made the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh, made all the skies and the earth, the ocean and the stars, the ground beneath, all the animals, as well as Adam and Eve. What a crock that story was. Amazing that so many people still believe that story. See why we need to get to work and fast? A little embarrassed and ashamed, the little girl defended herself and said, well, I did grow up in this Southern Christian culture, now didn't I? And if you didn't make me, who did? And if not you, how did I get here? That is an interesting question, said Spirit soothingly. Let's think about that together since we are rewriting some of these antique stories now. We don't have to rewrite Noah and Ark, do we? Noah and the Ark, do we? Or Jonah and the whale? I sort of like those stories, she responded. Well, you can't really pick and choose. Either we start all over or we accept what is already there. Okay, said the little girl, a little dejected. Your rules, I guess, since you are the primary author, and I hope you have some exciting stories to tell me. Chapter 2. Let me just say at this point, there are 8 chapters, so you can take breaks. One problem came up quickly on the date of the first writing appointment. The little girl had her computer and pen and paper, not knowing what Spirit prefers she do, and suddenly Spirit blustered again. Do you think this is typing class? Do you think that I will just speak words and you'll write them down? No way. That's too easy. For these appointments, you have to drop into a meditative state and we will enter the quantum field where the story will occur. So lie down, close your eyes, and start breathing slowly and deeply. And when you've dropped in, let me know. The little girl's brain thought, oh, so this is a trick to try to get me to meditate. Great. I'm not sure I can fool Spirit, but I plan to try. All of a sudden, when the little girl started breathing more gently and deeply, she dropped in and came upon a scene set at the edge of the water between ocean and land. Oh, I've been here before, the little girl thought. I had a waking dream once during a psychedelic trip that I was a mermaid or a woman crawling out of the sea. And since then, I've had another image during a more sober meditative journey where a Hawaiian looking brown woman with beautifully colored flowers wrapped around her neck came out of the ocean smiling at me excitedly. She had huge, full lips and a jiggly sort of body, wearing a grass skirt and a sports bra type thing. She looked so cheerful, and I immediately liked her. Then it hit her. Had she taken any medicines or sacraments recently? Or was she hallucinating stone cold sober? She didn't feel in charge at all and rather felt like she was floating around, seeing all these images coming in, beside, and toward her, one by one, without her doing anything at all. Okay, she remembered that during psychedelic journeys, her guides would tell them just to be curious and see what the images have to tell us. And they told us that if we get fearful, breathe and allow ourselves to relax and see if we can let go of our resistances and needs for control so that we can journey more deeply. It's all about surrender, she remembered. So she kept breathing deeply and gently. And slowly and surely, she saw more images. The dragonfly and the goldfinch arrived in the air, and she saw a pool of water beside the sandy beach at the edge of the ocean and the land. Hi there, or hi there, said a low, loud voice coming from the pool of water. I don't want to scare you, but I am Alligator, and I'm part of this newly reimagined Garden of Eden. Oh, hell, we need to change that name, Eden. Shouldn't we have this space called a different name? How about Shekinah? The little girl quickly answered, wondering where that word came from. She had no conscious clue. Shekinah. But the little girl had also slowly stopped breathing in her fright about Alligator. She shuddered and wondered if this had all been a practical joke that Spirit was playing on her. Maybe alligator had been sent to eat her, or at least pull her down into the water to drown her so that she would shut up. Where was God when she needed him? This time, alligator spoke to her calmly. We don't use that term God here. We're just a wide assortment of living and spiritual beings, and you don't need to fear us. We aren't like regular living beings on earth, but we came down into these bodies by some sort of selection process to carry out our missions here on earth. It is easy to confuse us with other living beings, though, so don't get all friendly with other alligators and such when you aren't here with spirit. That could be more dangerous. The little girl breathed a sigh of relief and then asked, Well, what are you doing here then? And instead of words answering her question, alligator transformed into the most magnificent dragon the little girl had ever seen. Large and robust, huge feet and tail, bright blue tones and oranges and reds. And this time the little girl didn't feel so afraid. She had had lots of experiences with dragons, all of them good. So selfishly, she did ask for a ride if those smallish dragon wings could fly her around. Definitely, answered Dragon without speaking a word, and she hopped high up on Dragon's back. Excuse me. Dragon's tiny wings enlarged and expanded, and off they flew. Fabulous, cried the little girl in her excitement. Take me away. All of a sudden, the little girl woke up from the story she had been living inside of and back to her regular human self. Oh, darn, little girl thought. I wanted to stay with Dragon and the water and all the creatures. That's enough today. For today, spoke Spirit, this time gently. What was that like for you? Wonderful, exclaimed the little girl. Let's do some more tomorrow. But that was not to be. Spirit explained to her that she must wait a day or two before plunging back into the story. After all, she was still human and had to get some chores done and ground herself into her body again for a while after such a hard work day. I feel great, she begged. Can't we do just a little more? What did I say? Said Spirit a bit shamingly. Rules are rules, and I'm the one in charge here, so you have to abide by my rules if this is going to work at all. Now, what do you say? Thank you, answered the little girl, already looking forward to her next journey with Spirit. Let me know when the time is right for us to work together again, okay? I will, said Spirit, who vanished out of sight. But Spirit hadn't really been in sight at all, just a voice speaking and booming. Well, I can't wait to see what happens next, thought the little girl. This is kind of fun. Chapter 3. But Spirit didn't return for quite some time, and the little girl wondered if her selfishness had turned them off somehow. What did she need to learn about this work so she could do it better? Out of the blue, the little girl heard, Enough of that kind of thinking, clamored Spirit suddenly. You did nothing right or wrong. You just did what you did. And remember, I'm in charge here. Our work together has some to do with you, but you're on my time schedule, and no need to take it so personally. I also hope you will not expect this to be a well-received publication. Many people will hate your writing. Well, that doesn't feel very good, thought the little girl, but she did think they were holding out on her and not letting her have fun again quickly as some sort of punishment. She didn't have to publish. She could just have some fun and see what happens. Wow, that didn't seem to be her usual way of thinking. She had been all about the attention she would get from outcomes and the love that would flow her way in the past. Of course you think that, spoke Spirit softly. After all, you're human, and that's how humans think. Ready to work some more? Yes, yelled the little girl, although she hadn't figured out how all this worked yet. Maybe she didn't have to figure it out, and maybe that took a load off her shoulders too. Maybe she could learn a little bit more about trust and see how things just happened. Okay, drop in and breathe slowly and deeply and try to relax your body and mind. This time, dropping in was harder because the little girl was so excited. But finally, her brain stopped babbling, and she saw herself climbing a familiar hilly path up into the forest. She hiked up and finally saw the blackest cave she had ever seen. But she had met this cave once before in another quantum guided journey in the past. She had loved that experience. At the mouth of this cave was a small river on the right, and she walked on the ground to the left of the river, hoping she would see the Black Panther that she had met before in this cave. But alas, in this scene, the feminine glowing Black Panther didn't show up. A male jaguar walked toward her instead. Before she had time to get scared, she remembered Spirit and her former guides who would tell her just to approach what seemed scary and ask if it has a message for her. "Oh, I have a message," roared the jaguar, gorgeous in his resplendent coat of many colors, patterns, and shapes. She petted his fur and reached out to hold on to him as they walked further into the blackness of the cave. He on her left hand on his back. What a lovely way to walk, she thought. Jaguar spoke quietly and gently this time. "This message is that if you slow down and even stop for one moment, breathe, relax, and breathe some more, your life will be so much better. And do this daily, not just every now and then." Sputtering, the little girl said, "Well, how did you know I have trouble with slowing down, being still, and listening to anything other than my own brain?" "Because," Jaguar said, "we are all connected, and sometimes if you learn to pace yourself differently, whole new worlds will open up to you, and you will have more of the most, excuse me, and you will have more of the most amazing experiences you have ever had in your whole set of lifetimes." The little girl knew she needed some help with this. "Okay, well, I've tried to slow down, stop, relax, breathe, and listen. But then I ended up talking to myself a lot and thought the words were from spirit, but now I can't be sure." And Jaguar touched his face to hers gently and put his soft nose on her forehead. "All words come from spirit," he said. "Feel this space on your head?" "Yes, that's my third eye chakra, my mind's eye, and I want it to open up a bit more." "Are you sure?" asked the jaguar. "Well, I think so, but I'm not sure how I will be then. Will I be so different that I won't know myself? Or will I be crazy and carted off to a psychiatric hospital? Or will I be like Psychic Frank and have more access to frequencies and stuff all around me and in space and from the great beyond and so forth? And if so, can I manage that?" Still wanting to control what she could. "You sound a little uncomfortable about opening up to me, but if you want, let's just try a little mantra as you close your eyes and follow my words, okay?" Jaguar, or spirit in Jaguar's body, whispered. The little girl closed her eyes and murmured assent. Before she heard any words, what she saw coming was like a runaway train moving rapidly toward her, and her heart beat so fast that she worried about having a heart attack. But then the train immediately slowed and stopped, waiting for her to get on the caboose. She stepped up and onto the train and felt a little lightheaded. As she looked into the window, she saw her forehead was gleaming and beaming, a lovely indigo color, indigo lit up. It seemed from inside of her, glowing out from her for several feet and circling itself all around her. Wow, what a great magic trick, the little girl thought. She sat down on the train, which began to move quickly again, and when she looked around, she saw no other human beings on the train. But she did see a wispy thread of smoke or glistening misty air and wondered what this was. As she looked more closely, she heard but didn't see a cheerful voice that said, "Hi, it's me, Casper, the friendly ghost." The little girl did remember Casper from childhood days and from two other drops into the quantum field. Casper seemed so energetic and floaty, and she enjoyed watching him fly in and out of windows, back and forth, until she seemed dizzy. "You are so speedy, Casper," she said. "Am I supposed to be settling down now and relaxing?" "Oh, you are," Casper replied, "and I'm helping you do that. Can't you just feel your eyes about to close, even though your third eye is still shining?" And with that, she fell into what felt like a deep, deep sleep for a long, long time. Chapter 4. This time, upon wakening and feeling oh so refreshed, the little girl decided to ask Spirit what all these journeys were about. She hadn't received a different storyline of Adam and Eve that she knew of, or the beginning of humanity, nor had she written down one word. Am I doing this right? She asked Spirit. Oh, yes, Spirit replied, for there is no other way to do this kind of work. Oh, okay. So what do we get to do today? That little girl asked. We need to wait a few days like before so you can let what all you have seen and experienced settle within you for a little while. Integrate it. Then we'll do some more work. Well, okay, the little girl sighed. She didn't know what to do with herself in the meantime. Eat, drink, and be merry, shouted Spirit. You're human after all. Go have some fun. And she did. Chapter 5. After her usual wandering around outdoors and seeing all the cathartic colors of autumn while the trees dropped some of their lingering leaves, and while the birds flew and sang, the little girl decided to lie down. Without thinking about Spirit or work, she fell into a waking dream. She heard these words. Maybe there is no need to reimagine the story of Adam and Eve anymore. Maybe the next thing to do is to fall into your own creativity, express yourself, sharing some of what you've learned and know, and let me speak through you more frequently and not so intensely. Maybe all of your travels are leading you to a well that David White wrote about in the past in the poem, The Well of Grief. Maybe that's your next journey. The little girl couldn't help but be annoyed. She had been told, or so she remembered, that she and Spirit were going to reimagine the story of Adam and Eve. Isn't that what Spirit and she had been practicing to do? Then she felt a soft touch on her arm and looked around and saw the divine feminine, a gorgeous goddess who seemed soothing and sweet. Maybe she would know what the little girl needed to do. So the little girl asked her, will you help me sort out what I'm doing here with Spirit and help me know what my real mission, my destiny, and my next few steps are? The divine one did not use words to speak. She illustrated her message with her body, moving and dancing almost seductively and certainly beautifully. The little girl thought, well, I like to dance too. So she sat up and got to her feet and then heard sounds and a music that she had never, ever heard before. Amazing melodies and indescribable faint sounds that seemed more like tones of singing bowls than singing itself. Although she wondered where the sounds came from, she decided just to breathe, close her eyes, and let her body tell her how to move. And she did. She didn't even stumble in her usual klutzy way, but as she moved, she seemed to fly up in the air with whooshes, seeing ribbons of warm lights seeming to stream from her fingers and toes, wrapping her all around her and outside of her. These tendrils of bright lights glowed and danced along with her. Wow, this is more fun than ever, the little girl discovered. What freedom, what joyous movement with no constraints or binds, no barriers or boundaries between me, my body, the air, the earth, and the water. We're all just moving together in unison, and we haven't any audience. Isn't that nice? What she said is, we haven't any audience. Isn't that nice? Only then did she get abruptly halted by some force outside of her. It was fire, and fire also spoke loudly and forcefully, sharing way too much heat with her. What's that now? Fire questioned. I want to join the party too. Okay, said the little girl, come on and join in, although she felt more fearful about fire's presence than she had in all of her former times of dropping in. Thank you, Fire shouted in glee, and as the little girl made space for Fire, she saw bright, bursting flames reaching up to the skies, burning the ground, filling up the whole world with smoke and ash in Fire's excitement. Somewhat panicked, the little girl screamed to Fire, "You seem pretty dangerous, bursting out and getting us all so hot that we might burst into flames ourselves." And no sooner had she said this than her body burst into flames itself. "Oh, my, how exciting," she was able to say before she became so at one with Fire that she knew not how to speak anymore. "See all that fear you have," whispered Fire. "You can let go of all that fear. Let it burn and be released into the air, the atmosphere, and into Mother Earth." So the little girl could no longer speak. She nodded her flaming head, her red flaming head, and breathed deeply and summoned up all her fear. Then the fire that she became was huge and powerful, moving out beyond any boundaries and consuming whatever was in her path. The little girl in her certainly wasn't clear about this was being a good idea. Then all of a sudden, for the first time, she felt deep trust inside of her and let go of all of her fear. Burning brightly, shining strongly, and destroying everything in her path. What a relief! This trust, felt the little girl, and with that she blew herself out and disappeared without a sound. Chapter 6. Excuse me. Although still not visible to the human eyesight, the little girl in her disappearance was still there. But she knew she had another journey to take. Perhaps she had, in fact, disappeared as the body she once had or hosted. Perhaps her vessel had just changed because the angel of peace and the balm of spirit came and visited her shortly after her fear burned itself down to nothing. The little girl wondered if she had been in Dante's Inferno and that perhaps she may proceed to purgatory now, but those categories didn't really make sense to her anyway. So she greeted this new angel of peace with a warm handshake. Angel put her flowing arms all around the little girl and blessed her with a long and satisfying life wherever her soul was housed. "Wow, that's nice," said the little girl. "I may have burned down one body, but it sounds like there are more vessels I may be able to use if I were to incarnate once more. After all, I feel like many of my past lifetimes, I was an animal, like the jaguar, mountain lion, or tiger, or I was a bird of some sort. One vessel was even a Portuguese man of war. What a silly label to put on a community of living beings, living organisms who work so closely together. But maybe the war part is about if a predator gets near. And after all, a man must have named it." "Oh, angel of peace, tell me about you and about peace, please," said the little girl excitedly. Then suddenly her excitement vanished, and she felt a profound and deep sense of calm invade her current manifestation. Peace glowed like a warm but not hot sun. She felt as if warm golden oil was being poured all over her body, soothing each and every muscle, every bone and cell. Oh, the little girl wondered, maybe this angel doesn't need to use words. What an amazing set of feelings. I hope Angel stays. But then that feeling didn't last too long. Along with the little girl's experience of that deep sense of peace, she noticed that she did have another body in which to exist in a manifest way. And she looked down at herself and saw white fluffiness and hooves, finally realizing that this body was that of a newborn lamb. "A lamb," she spoke in her peaceful state. "Oh, how cool. I love the idea of little lambs, and they certainly have been symbolic in my culture. How did this happen?" The angel of peace responded silently, offering that she jump about and play for a while. This lamb is a part of you, the little girl heard from someplace with no body. She's always been a part of you, but in your past manifestation, you were all about showing out in public, seeking feedback and reinforcement, attention and love. But deep inside you, the lamb has always been there, maybe covered up by wild cats and other beasts. You've actually neglected your tiny lamb. Oh no, cried the little girl. I didn't mean to neglect her. I haven't seen her clearly before except once. About a year ago, she came to my mind, and I even bought a little white lamb plushie then. She sits and stares at me while I'm on the computer in a bright spot on top of books near a bowl of feathers, photos, and other stuff like crystals. Crystals, rocks, and candles. Maybe I didn't know she needed me. I've always surrounded myself with human beings who needed me, and I didn't know what to do with myself when I got tired of their needs. Didn't know where to turn or who could satisfy me because I'd often been so busy meeting other people's needs or meeting even just what I thought they needed. Oh, I got well paid, no doubt about it, but I didn't know my little lamb needed me like I know so clearly now. Well, she does, the little girl heard. She needs you badly. Earlier, this little lamb had suffered from a failure to thrive because she got so little love and attention early on. But she survived that and now wants you to take care of her better than you've ever done before. Can you do that? Can I do that? Well, sure, but I'm not sure how to actually. I love petting my little white dog. Can I pet my lamb? Or can I wrestle with her and roll around with her on soft surfaces? Can I kiss and feed her and take her out to walk with me in Mother Nature? Do I have to leash her so she will stay with me, or will she stay with me and not leave me? Oh, and can she sleep with me? Yes, you can do all of the above, and she has nowhere else to go. She is you. She will never leave you. And all these years of human loss and grief, especially when you tried so hard not to be too vulnerable so as not to be hurt, or be crushed by grief or loss, she was there waiting for you to turn toward her and see her and pet her and love her. Oh my, wailed the little girl. I want to say that I had no idea, but actually I did know this at times and just got busy since it made me uncomfortable to take care of my little lammy pie myself, thinking she should just grow up like I did without much help or support. Oh, I have been wounded and blind. I didn't even hear her bleats when she cried out to me. I am so sorry, little lamb. Just when the little girl thought she was getting clear about this, the angel of peace disappeared, and the little girl fell again into a deep sleep. Chapter 7. It must have been the waters that saved her. Her dream had been filled with burning, her disappearing, and then reappearing as a lamb. The tides now pushed her up onto the sand, and the land no longer a little girl, but a full-bodied young woman. What is happening to me? She wondered with only a little alarm. Lovely tides, streaming salty water washing up and over her, her head face up toward the blue skies. She looked around her, above her, and then she looked at her body, which was shockingly dark, with brownish black skin that she didn't remember having before. She wondered if she was the same being as the little girl had been, and then she heard a voice. You are Lilith, the first woman. You've been growing in the water all this time, developing and forming in a larval state, like a dragonfly. You are now becoming human, your gills receding, your tail drawing up toward your body, becoming a nice round piece of flesh. This statement did shock her a little at first. Lilith? I had an Aunt Lillian once, and that was my mother's middle name, but Lilith? Oh, do you mean the first woman as in way back in time when there were no people? She and you were made from the same clay as a man named Adam, who then became your partner, the voice told her. Then another voice spoke, trying to explain to her that this was the beginning of time and the beginning of life for all human beings, that before then they were cells, molecules, bacteria, and so on, until somehow they magically formed clay, which then mysteriously became human beings. And she was one of two. Wait a minute, she shouted. Too much information all at once. What? At that point, she sat up, saw her feet still in the water and her torso on the sand, sitting on the round part of her that used to be a fishtail. How did this happen? She wondered. And then, as if the divine feminine had come down and embraced her, she heard a sweet and kind voice say, "It doesn't matter how you got here or what you are made of. You are a woman and your name is Lilith, and you get to live here on this planet with the water, the land, and so much more." "Okay," said Lilith, only a little bit soothed. "I'll talk with you later about how I got here and what all this life stuff means. But for now, I want to get up and move around." And with that, she pushed herself off the sand and beheld the most beautiful water she had ever seen. After all, she hadn't seen much yet. White-topped waves and flowing water back and forth from the beach up onto the land. "Oh," she thought, "now I see why I'm perplexed. Why language hasn't even been invented, and who gets to name all these pieces of water and earth?" As she stood up, she wobbled a little and proclaimed that she was woman out loud. "I am woman," making a weird sound coming from her throat chakra. And then she lost consciousness and fell back into the sand, the waters lapping at her side. She closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep. And this is the final chapter, chapter 8. The little girl came back to some sort of consciousness as she heard the words, "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust." She had heard these words before while going to funerals in the past. "Out of the dust we come, and to dust we shall return," or something like that. She rubbed her eyes, wondering whose funeral she was attending. All of a sudden, her vision expanded, and she saw that she was not at a funeral per se, but that she and every living being on the earth was perched to watch the ending of the planet. Ending of the planet, she thought, how terribly sad. Everything she saw was poised to be destroyed by whatever natural disaster or human tragedy prompted this current reckoning. Everyone looked so very sad and scared, she thought. And as she was thinking this, she rose up into the atmosphere above the ground and looked all around her. She could see far and wide from continent to continent, both the North and South poles. The last thing she had remembered when she was that she was Lilith, the first woman, being born like an amphibian in the sea, moving up and onto land. Now, as some sort of living being or symbol, she rose into the air, seeing devastation, pain, and division all around her. She mourned along with all the living beings who only knew life on earth and did not yet realize that when they died or were destroyed, that they would transform, transition, and move forward as souls into other galaxies, planets, star systems, and beyond without experiencing the pain of death at all. It seemed like it was her job to proclaim the good news to all who saw her rise up into the air like a daunting goddess, large enough for every living being on earth to witness her rising. No longer did she hear the voice of spirit or alligator, dragonfly, or goldfinch, not the angel of peace or any voice other than her own. For after all, when she was a little girl, there were always parts of human beings like heart and mind, spirit and body. Now we are all one part of the whole, and she had been selected to speak the truth to all who are suffering. If I were still human, thought this new being, if I were still the little girl or Lilith or a grown woman, I would be just as frightened and full of grief as all these other living beings. I must have wandered throughout much space and time to arrive at Mother Earth's ending without such strong feelings of disappointment and woe. In fact, I feel quite celebratory. Suddenly, all the volcanoes of the world erupted, swallowing many of the living beings into burning hot lava, mercifully killing them quickly. Everyone else panicked and began running toward the sea. She hovered above them, and as they entered whatever water they could find, she knew she had to speak hurriedly, or her message would not be heard. All of you, she boomed. Yes, you there, you and you, look up at me and listen, for I have good news. I know that you're terrified, and no wonder, because Mother Earth is about to be absorbed into Andromeda, another galaxy that's lived outside the Milky Way until now. And as this merging happens, you will cease to exist as who you are now, but you will continue to live on eternally, forever, as the soul you have always been. The crowds of people clapped, and the other living beings did what they knew how to do to applaud her words and the feelings she shared with them. You will soon seem to drop into a deep sleep. And I want you to know that when Mother Earth explodes or gets absorbed, you will not realize or feel any pain whatsoever. Your souls will be scooped up and they'll fly freely into the atmosphere, into space and beyond. Your souls will find their ways to their next places and spaces to live. So yes, you will be losing family and friends, loved ones, and even enemies, but they will always be energetic moments in your soul's life in different forms at different times. And this is just how eternal souls exists and live on and on. She spoke with such authority that she even surprised herself. You will not be harmed or hurt. You will just vanish as the being you are and return to some sort of form or vessel of consciousness somewhere else during some other time period. Maybe you can see this time as the greatest adventure of all time. So I want you to hold hands or get close enough to other human beings nearby and touch them. And not all just human beings, but other living beings. And when every living being is being touched, we will all move onwards together. That's it. Take your time and be not afraid. Reach out and touch. And then even she stopped speaking. If anyone had been watching from outside of this scene, observing what happened, they would see no crashes, no fires, no explosions, no floods, but all of a sudden a beauteous mist moved downward all around and enveloped Mother Earth. And when the mist fully clothed the earth, every part of the earth vanished gently, silently, and peacefully, like specks of dust floating in a bright light. This is the new story of the beginning of humanity, reimagining the story of Adam and Eve, if you will. This story is about human beings and other living beings and the souls that they all contain and express. Souls move from vessel to vessel, depending on many variables and factors. And more of this evolutionary story is for another space and time. For now, this adventure is over. This recording is complete. And with that, no more needs to be said or understood. This just is the beginning. Thank you for listening to this short story that I wrote, and I hope to expand on it and write more later. And it was so fun. I'm sorry I had to take a couple of breaths and repeat myself a few times, but this was so fun to read this as Sacred Metamorphoses. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for free if you'd like, and or visit my website at sacredmetamorphoses.com. That's plural. Or you can email me at Barbara Grace, Barbaragrace, BARBARAGRACE, period, 2023@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I will talk with you again later. Thank you for listening to my story, my fictional story.